That clever by-half husband of mine kept a delicate white lotus flower on the side. To give the white lotus a proper status, he coaxed me into signing a land deed. I looked at the calculation and impatience in his eyes, and signed it cleanly. He didn't know that divorce agreement was exactly what I wanted. I left the estate that very night and married the down-and-out scholar he had once suppressed. Now, my husband has become the Grand Secretary of the current dynasty, while he has become a prisoner personally sent there by my husband. The cold wind of early winter, carrying broken snow, swept past the tall vermilion lacquered gate of the Grand Secretary's residence. From the end of the long street below came a commotion iron chains, dragging across the bluestone pavement, making a grating friction sound, like a dull knife scraping against bone. I pushed open the carved wooden window, and cold wind instantly poured in, making my sleeves flutter wildly. A procession escorting prisoners was slowly approaching. The prisoner at the front wore filthy prison clothes, his hair tangled into a mess, his face covered with mud, water, and blood. He was bent over by heavy shackles, stumbling with each step as if exhausting all his strength. The prison cart happened to stop right in front of the Grand Secretary's gate, and he seemed to sense something, suddenly lifting his head. That face, I once knew so well, now showed only savagery and wretchedness. When his gaze pierced through the swirling snow and met mine, those murky eyes instantly burst with an almost insane hatred. Shen Yue Zhao. He roared my name hoarsely, his voice raspy like a broken gong, carrying endless unwillingness and venomous resentment. You poisonous woman. May you die a horrible death. I watched him quietly, expressionless. A warm cloak gently fell upon my shoulders, blocking out the cold from outside the window. Lu Xian walked to my side, his slender fingers adjusting the ties of the cloak for me. The wind is strong outside. Be careful not to catch a cold. His voice was low and gentle, carrying a reassuring strength. I turned my head to look at him. He wore official robes of dark purple embroidered with gold thread, his posture upright, his features bearing the composure and dignity of one long accustomed to high position. Hard to imagine that the current chief Grand Secretary Lu, who now wielded enormous power at court, was once that destitute scholar shivering in a dilapidated temple, and downstairs, that prisoner who looked like a mad dog, Gu Cheng'an, was once the talented young man envied by all in the capital. My ex-husband. My thoughts were pulled back to a year ago by his hoarse roar. In the study of the Jiyu residence, on the expensive rosewood desk, incense smoke curled upward. Gu Cheng'an pushed a document in front of me, his tone carrying a tenderness I had never heard before. Yue Zhao, you've been married to me for 5 years, managing all the household affairs large and small. You've worked hard. He pointed at that document, his eyes full of calculation and impatience. This is the deed to the villa in the south of the city. I specially bought it and registered it under your name. Consider it a little private gift from me. From now on, you'll have a quiet place to go. I lowered my eyelids, my gaze falling on the document. On the rice paper, 6 large characters, deed to villa in south of city, were written in fine Hui ink. The handwriting was elegant, just like him as a person, always putting on a refined and graceful appearance. But right below those 6 large characters, a line written in tiny regular script was hidden extremely discreetly. The marital bond is severed, voluntarily requesting divorce. All dowry and trousseau shall belong to the husband's family. A divorce agreement. He actually used this kind of underhanded trick, attempting to deceive me into signing this unequal treaty, to swallow up all the vast wealth accumulated by my Shen family over generations. All just to make room for that white lotus he is keeping on the side. Lu Ruyan. In that moment, my heart felt as if it had been plunged into an ice cellar, completely frozen through. I raised my head, but a surprised and touched smile bloomed on my face. Husband, you treat me so well. I lowered my head, pretending to be shy, my voice trembling, as if I'd been dazed by this sudden favor. Seeing me take the bait, Gu Cheng'an's eyes directly revealed impatience and contempt. He urged, "Since you like it, hurry and sign it, so the authorities can stamp it sooner." I picked up the brush and dipped it fully in ink. Under his smug and contemptuous gaze, I wrote my name stroke by stroke, clearly and forcefully. Shen Yue Zhao. Then, I dipped my fingertip in the ink pad and pressed down hard, the red strikingly vivid. He couldn't wait to snatch the document from my hand. blue on the ink marks, his face showing a satisfied smile of getting what he wished for. I looked at his hypocritical face and calmly stood up. Gu Chang'an. I spoke softly. We're even now. He froze for a moment, seemingly not understanding what I meant, thinking I was just throwing a tantrum, and impatiently waved his hand. All right, stop being petty, go pack your things. I smiled, turned and left, my departing figure showing not a trace of attachment. He didn't know that what he thought was his scheme was actually the road to the underworld I had paved for him. I returned to the courtyard where I had lived for 5 years. Gu Chang'an was indeed considerate, sending 2 burly old women to guard the entrance, under the pretense of helping me pack. They were actually monitoring me, afraid I'd take away anything I shouldn't take. One of them, Granny Jiang, was a chambermaid of Du Chang'an's mother and had always looked down on me. She blocked my way with a fake smile, speaking in a sarcastic tone. Madam, oh no, I should call you Miss Shen now. The master has spoken. You are to request a mutual divorce and leave with nothing, except for those few old clothes on your body. Don't even think about anything else, lest everyone's face looks bad. Another old woman Lai also chimed in. That is right, Miss Shen. Don't blame us. We're just following orders. Everything in this courtyard, from the tables and chairs to the decorations, they're all the Gu family's property. They sang in harmony, their words full of meanness and humiliation, like countless tiny needles trying to pierce into my heart. For 5 years, I used my dowry to support a declining Gu family into a nouveau rich of the capital. The silk and satin Gu Chang'an wears, the aged fine wine he drinks stand, which of these wasn't bought with my Shen family's money? Now, they can brazenly say that all of this belongs to the Gu family. I couldn't be bothered to waste words with these servants and walked straight into the inner room. They followed closely behind, their eyes sweeping over everything in the room, like hawks. I ignored their greedy gazes, walked to the vanity table, didn't touch those jeweled accessories, and only took out an inconspicuous pearwood box from the bottom drawer. The box had no lock and looked plain and simple. Old woman Jiang immediately stepped forward, wanting to reach out and snatch it. Miss Shen, this must be left behind too. I coldly glanced at her, the chill in my eyes making her instinctively withdraw her hand. Inside this are some old belongings my mother left me. They're not worth much money. My tone was flat, yet carried an authority that made people dare not disobey. What? Is the Guillot family going to snatch even a dead person's belongings? The 2 old women were left speechless by my retort, exchanging glances with each other, ultimately not daring to step forward again. That night, the Guillot residence was brightly lit. Guillot Chang'an held a grand banquet, publicly claiming it was to celebrate my poor health and relocation to the southern villa for recuperation. In reality, it was to welcome his beloved Lu Ruyan into the residence. I could clearly hear across the courtyard walls the sounds of string and wind instruments from the front yard, the clamor of guests, and Gu Chang'an's high-spirited, triumphant laughter. He probably thought that at this moment I was hiding in my room, crying over my own foolishness and my miserable future fate. Holding that pearwood box, I walked to the innermost part of the bedroom and pushed open a row of bookshelves. On the wall, an inconspicuous hidden door suddenly appeared. This was a secret passage I had ordered people to secretly build in my 2nd year of marrying into the Guillot family. This so-called home had always been nothing more than a gorgeous cage built with money and hypocrisy to me, and I was familiar with every exit of this cage. I took one last look at this place where I had devoted 5 years of my heart and soul, without the slightest attachment, then turned and walked into the dark secret passage. Outside the secret passage, the cold wind was biting. Following the route I had planned long ago, I arrived at a dilapidated temple on the outskirts of the city. In the temple, a solitary lamp flickered like a bean, casting the shadow of a slender figure. Lu Xian was sitting on a pile of straw, reading by the faint lamplight. Beside him were only 2 scrolls of books and a pot of cold water. Hearing footsteps, he looked up. Seeing it was me, he didn't ask much, just took out a water pouch wrapped in cloth from his chest and handed it to me. Have some hot water to warm yourself up. Everything's been settled. No extra words, yet it made one feel at ease on such a cold night. I took the water pouch, warmth spreading from my fingertips through my entire body. Under his clear and calm gaze, I opened that pearwood box Inside were no gold or silver jewelry, no priceless antiques, only a thick stack of documents and dozens of seals of various sizes. These were the actual deeds and seals of all the shops, estates, and workshops, under my name from the Shen family. My dowry was more than 3 times the total assets of the Giyu family combined. I pushed the box in front of him. Lucian. My voice sounded especially clear in the empty, dilapidated temple. I offer this vast fortune as my betrothal gift. Zan, do you dare to marry me? In his usually calm eyes, a look of shock finally appeared. The lamplight flickered, illuminating his refined face, and also my all-or-nothing determination. I wasn't born this cold and hard. I too once had innocence and naivety, once held fantasies about love. It is just that 5 years of marriage have worn away all my warmth. Time rewinds to a month ago. That was the first time I met Liu Ruyan. Gu Cheng'an brought her back to the manor and announced publicly that she was a distant cousin from his hometown, orphaned and helpless, who came to the capital to seek his help. Liu Ruyan had a pitiful face, a frail figure, spoke in a soft voice, and always looked at people timidly, like a frightened little deer, but when she curtsied to me, I caught a flash of provocation in her eyes, because what she was wearing was a silver fox fur, trimmed cloak that I had just personally sewn for Gu Cheng'an a few days ago, right in front of me. Gu Cheng'an held her hand and comforted her with gentle words. Ruyan, from now on, treat this place as your own home. Yu Zhao is kind-hearted and will take good care of you. After saying that, he turned to me, his tone becoming matter-of-fact. Yu Zhao, give Ruyan the best room in the east wing, the Lanyue Pavilion. She is frail and needs a room that faces the sun. My heart sank in that moment. Lanyue Pavilion was the courtyard my mother left for my most loyal dowry maid to retire in. I had mentioned this to Gu Cheng'an before, and he had readily agreed at the time. Now, he wanted me to hand it over to a woman of unknown origins. I looked at Gu Cheng'an, trying to find guilt on his face. There was none. He only had a calm demeanor and a forceful tone. I nodded and said, "Okay." From that day on, my nightmare began. Liu Ruyan was like a thorn stuck in my heart, constantly reminding me of my failure and ridiculousness. She would accidentally break the only keepsake my mother left me, Zan mutton, Zan fat jade bracelet of excellent quality. When I looked at the shattered pieces all over the floor, my heart aching so much, I couldn't breathe. Gu Cheng'an instead scolded me. Can't you just be more accommodating to her? Ruyan didn't do it on purpose. Over a bracelet. Why be so petty, making you, the lady of the house, look so ungracious? He would compose poetry with Liu Ruyan in the study, enjoying her company by candlelight. Yet, he made me wait outside the door like a servant, having to go in every so often to serve tea and snacks, watching them exchange flirtatious glances and tender affection with my own eyes. The most outrageous time was when Liu Ruyan fell ill. She lay delicately in bed, specifically requesting lily and lotus seed soup made by my own hands. Suppressing my disgust, I busied myself in the kitchen for a whole hour, then brought the soft, sweet soup I'd stewed to her room. She took it, but the moment I turned around, she accidentally let it slip from her hand. The entire bowl of scalding hot soup spilled completely. Most of it splashed onto the back of my hand. Burning pain instantly struck, and I watched helplessly as the back of my hand rapidly swelled and blistered. Gu Cheng'an rushed in when he heard the commotion, didn't even glance at me, and went straight to the bedside to nervously check on Liu Ruyan. "Ruyan, are you all right? Were you frightened? Did you get burned?" Liu Ruyan's tears came at will, leaning against his chest like a pear blossom in the rain. "Brother Cheng'an, I didn't mean to. It is all my fault. It is all because sister didn't hold it steady." Gu Cheng'an immediately turned his head, like an enraged lion, and roared at me in fury. He grabbed my wrist, with such force that it almost crushed my bones. "Shen Yuezhao, you can't even hold a bowl of soup steady. What else can you do? You deliberately wanted to scald Ruyan, didn't you?" I looked at his face twisted with anger, then at my own hands scalded bright red, and their deeply affectionate scene, the last bit of something called affection, in my heart, was completely burned to ashes by that bowl of scalding hot soup. At that moment, I didn't cry, nor did I argue. I just looked at him calmly as a thought rose crystal clear in my mind. "Gu Cheng'an, you and your Liu Ruyan must both pay the price for this. I will make you both suffer eternal damnation. From that day on, I became increasingly obedient on the surface, even caring attentively for Lu Ruyan. In secret, however, I met with the head manager of the Shen family trading company and began a month-long plan to secretly transfer all assets. I need a fulcrum that can leverage Gu Chang'an and make him fall from the clouds. Just then, at a street corner, I happened to see the destitute and down-and-out Lu Xian. He was once the most famous talented scholar in the capital, who took the imperial examination the same year as Gu Chang'an. Everyone said that year's top scholar title was definitely his. But on the eve of the palace examination, he was falsely accused of cheating in the imperial exam. Not only was his scholarly honor stripped away, but he was also expelled from the academy, becoming a rat crossing the street that everyone wanted to beat. I knew it was Gu Chang'an's doing. Only because Lu Xian's talent and learning overshadowed his. Gu Chang'an's jealousy and viciousness destroyed a genius's future, and conveniently delivered to me the sharpest knife for revenge. New grudges and old hatreds, perfect to settle all at once. The morning of the second day after the divorce, Gu Chang'an woke up from his drunken stupor, thinking of that divorce agreement and the enormous wealth he was about to obtain. He hummed a little tune with smug satisfaction and got up to head to the storehouse. My dowry had always been managed privately by me, and the storehouse key was only in my hands. He held the string of keys I had conveniently left behind after signing yesterday, his face full of greed. He seemed to already see the mountains of gold, silver, jewels, silks and satins, antiques and paintings piled up in the storehouse, all about to become his possessions. With slightly trembling hands, he opened that heavy copper lock and forcefully pushed open the storehouse door. The imagined glittering gold did not appear. In the enormous storehouse, it was completely empty. Not even a single hair remained. Only dust covering the floor and a lone slip of paper in the center. Gu Chang'an staggered inside and picked up the slip of paper. On it was my elegant handwriting. Many thanks, Gu Lang, for granting me freedom. Shen Yue Zhao. Gu Chang'an's furious roar nearly lifted the roof off the entire Gu residence. In his rage, he assumed I had merely hidden the assets away. After all, those shops and estates were still theirs and the monk may flee, but the temple remains. He clutched that divorce agreement he thought was his trump card and charged aggressively to my largest property, Zan Shen Silk Shop. Tell your manager to come out. From today on, I'm your new owner. He slammed the divorce agreement on the counter, shouting arrogantly at the clerk. Manager Wang unhurriedly walked out from the back hall, cupped his hands toward him, his face bearing a polite yet distant smile. Master Gu, what is the meaning of this? What meaning? Shen Yue Zhao has already requested a divorce herself. All her properties now belong to me, Gu Chang'an. Quickly hand over the account books and seals. The smile on Manager Wang's face remained unchanged, but he pulled out a new deed from under the counter. Master Gu, I'm afraid you've arrived a step too late. Our owner already transferred the silk shop to a new owner half a month ago. In black and white, stamped by the authorities. Please take a look. Gu Chang'an snatched the deed away. When he saw the name of the new owner signed on it, he was completely dumbfounded. That name, he didn't recognize it at all, refusing to believe it. He frantically ran to all the rice shops, tea houses, and estates under my name throughout the capital. What he got was the same answer. The owner has already changed, Master Giyu. You're too late. Only then did he suddenly realize. I wasn't the abandoned wife he had thrown out. I had proactively escaped from my shell under his schemes. The Gu family that he was so proud of and more than half of its business relied on my dowry properties for turnover and support. Now that I had pulled the rug out from under them, the Giyu family's capital chain was broken. Gu Chang'an, as if gone mad, sent all the servants and attendants of the entire household to search the whole capital for my whereabouts. Finally, he found me in an extremely shabby minjai in the west part of the city. It was a small courtyard. I was sitting on a stone stool in the yard, leisurely airing out Lu Xian's somewhat yellowed books. The warm winter sun shone on me, warm and cozy. Lu Xian was right beside me, patiently teaching a few neighborhood children to read and write. The tender sound of reading, mixed with the scent of sunshine, and peaceful and beautiful times. This scene formed the sharpest, most glaring contrast with his current madness and wretchedness. Shen Yue Zhao. He kicked open the dilapidated wooden door, eyes bloodshot as he charged in, grabbing my wrist in one swift motion, his face twisted with rage. You dare scheme against me. Where did you take all my money? His grip was incredibly strong, squeezing my wrist painfully. Before I could even open my mouth, a figure stepped in front of me. Lu Xian forcefully pushed him away, steadily shielding me behind him. He was still wearing his old scholar's robe, faded from washing, his frame slender, but his eyes were unusually cold and resolute. Sir, please show some respect to my wife. Wife? Gu Cheng'an acted as if he'd heard the joke of the century. He pointed at me, then at Lu Xian, and burst into maniacal laughter. Ha ha ha, Shen Yuezhao, you've really outdone yourself. Just left the Gushi family and already found such a poor scholar to take over. How desperately hungry are you? His words were venomous to the extreme. I stepped out from behind Lu Xian, wearing a faint smile on my face, completely unfazed by his words. From my sleeve, I slowly pulled out a piece of paper. It was our freshly obtained marriage contract that we'd just retrieved from the government office. I held up the marriage contract, waving it before his bloodshot eyes. Gu Cheng'an, forgot to tell you. My voice wasn't loud, yet it was like a resounding slap, striking hard across his face. All my assets are now jointly owned by my husband and me. Want to touch even one? Try it. Gu Cheng'an was so enraged by me that he spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot and staggered away with the help of servants. I know. This is just the beginning. To deal with Gu Cheng'an, I can't rely on brute force alone. Zan, I need to use my brain. I want him to witness with his own eyes that everything he once despised, scorned, and suppressed will become dreams forever beyond his reach. And I will be the one who personally weaves this nightmare for him. The first thing I did was to clear Lu Xian's name. I mobilized a hidden connection the Shen family had cultivated in official circles for years and easily found the classmate who had falsely accused Lu Xian of cheating back then. That person thought the matter had long passed and never expected it to be dug up again. I didn't use forceful methods. I simply had the shopkeeper, inadvertently, let slip that his brother, who worked in the Ministry of Personnel, seemed to have run into some trouble recently. That person was immediately scared out of his wits and spilled all the truth, like beans pouring out of a bamboo tube. Everything was indeed orchestrated by Gu Cheng'an behind the scenes. He gave that person a large sum of money, promised him future prospects, and had him give false testimony. I obtained his signed confession, but didn't submit it immediately. I anonymously sent this evidence to the desk of the current Provincial Education Commissioner. The Provincial Education Commissioner was famous for cherishing talent, being upright and incorruptible. And what he hated most was precisely this kind of despicable act that buried talent. Sure enough, within 3 days, the case was retried. Lu Xian's injustice was cleared, and his academic honors were restored, and that classmate who gave false testimony had his honors revoked and was permanently barred from employment. Gu Cheng'an, as the instigator, was also reprimanded by the authorities and fined a large sum of money. For him, with his capital chain now broken, this was undoubtedly adding insult to injury. He was frantically dealing with the mess of his family business and had no time to bother with us anymore. After clearing his name, the second thing I did for Lu Xian was to pave the way for him. I hired several of the best scholars in the capital as his teachers with a hefty sum to analyze current affairs and explain essays for him. I provided him with an absolutely quiet and comfortable study environment, so he no longer had to worry about making a living and could devote himself wholeheartedly to his studies. Lu Xian did not disappoint me. He was already a genius, just buried before. Now with the opportunity, he was like a sponge, frantically absorbing knowledge. At the autumn provincial examination, half a year later, he won first place with an absolute advantage, becoming the new Jiayuan. For a time, the name Lu Xian spread throughout the entire capital. The powerful and noble in the capital all heard that this new Jiayuan was exceptionally talented, but from a poor family, and they all extended olive branches to him. Invitations to various banquets flew in like snowflakes. I knew this was a critical step. Choosing the wrong side would make the future path incredibly difficult. I utilized the Shen family's nationwide commercial information network to compile and advance the backgrounds, preferences, political views, and personal connections of officials from all major factions in the capital into volumes. Every night, I would sit with Lu Xian under the lamplight. carefully analyzing the advantages and disadvantages of these people. In the end, we chose the most difficult path to walk, but also the most solid one, Zan pledging allegiance to the Qinglu faction, known for their integrity and incorruptibility. Lu Xian, with his outstanding scholarship and humble, courteous manner, quickly won the favor of the Qinglu faction's leader, Lord Lin, the current second Grand Secretary of the court. At the same time, I heard news about the Giyu family. After Gu Chang'an's family fell into decline, Li Ruyan completely tore off her disguise. She was no longer that tender and sweet understanding flower. The two quarreled incessantly day after day, causing chaos and turmoil over money. Du Chang'an, driven to desperation, tried to imitate my past business model and go into business himself. But he was eager for quick success and had neither business acumen nor foresight. Several investments left him with nothing but losses. The once glorious Gu family had now become a laughingstock in the capital. The spring imperial examination was approaching. I arranged everything for Lu Xian's journey and personally escorted him to the examination grounds. I said to him, "Just focus on the exam with peace of mind. I'll clear all obstacles ahead for you." He looked at me, his eyes filled with the depth of affection and determination I had never seen before. "Yue Zhao, wait for me." At the palace examination, Lu Xian's essay on the administration of officials directly addressed current problems with sharp criticism, and his proposed solutions were penetrating and insightful, with unique perspectives. The emperor on the dragon throne was greatly pleased after reading it, and immediately slammed the table in admiration. "This young man shall be a pillar of the nation." Without any suspense, Lu Xian was personally selected as the new top scholar and appointed as a compiler at the Hanlin Academy. On the day of the top scholars' parade through the streets, the entire capital was deserted as everyone came out to watch. Lu Xian wore a bright red top scholar's robe, a black gauze hat adorned with golden flowers, and rode a tall horse, slowly passing through the long street. With the spring breeze bringing success, his horse's hooves were light. Taking in all the flowers of Chang'an in a single day, I had reserved the entire second floor of the best tea house by the street, sitting by the window. When his horse passed below the building, he seemed to sense something and looked up. Through the noisy crowd, his gaze landed precisely on me, his eyes smiling, brilliant as stars. At that moment, all the sacrifices were worth it. In a corner of the crowd, a man in tattered clothes with a haggard appearance was staring fixedly at Lu Xian on his horse. His eyes were filled with jealousy, regret, and insane venomous hatred. It was Gu Chang'an. I merely glanced at him indifferently, then withdrew my gaze. To me, he had long become dust by the roadside, not worth mentioning. Gu Chang'an looked at the high-spirited Lu Xian, then thought of his own current miserable situation. After returning home and facing Lu Ruyan's endless complaints and pressuring, he completely lost his rationality. "Money, money, money. All you know is money. If it weren't for you, this jinx, would I have fallen to this state today? Gu Chang'an, you useless waste. If I hadn't seen you had money back then, would I, Lu Ruyan, have followed you? Now that there is no money, what the hell are you?" The quarrel between the two eventually escalated into a physical fight. In order to quickly amass wealth and salvage his laughable self-esteem, Gu Chang'an began to take desperate risks. Through some of his former fair-weather friends, he made a connection and colluded with Jiangnian water bandits to start smuggling illegal salt. He thought he was doing it without anyone knowing. Little did he know, his every move was under my surveillance. That friend, who made the connection for him and half of the money he received, was mine. Those people in the government offices who provided him with conveniences and channels had long been taken care of by me. I even had my subordinates deliberately and inadvertently solve a few small troubles for him, making him think he was flawless and his fortune was prospering. I just wanted to let him sink deeper and deeper into this road of no return, until he could never turn back. After Lu Xian entered officialdom, he was diligent and down to earth, quickly establishing a firm foothold in the Hanlin Academy. The good strategies he proposed multiple times were all adopted by the emperor, deeply winning the emperor's favor. I continued to expand my business empire, taking advantage of the Gui family's downfall to swallow up all the market share they had previously occupied in one gulp. Seeing that the Gui family had no hope of making a comeback, Lu Ruyan, in the dead of night, made off with the last sum of money Gu Chang'an had obtained through smuggling, and eloped with a passing wealthy merchant. Overnight, Gu Cheng'an became truly alone in the world, abandoned by all. He didn't reflect on his own stupidity and greed, but instead blamed all his failures on me and Lu Xian. The seeds of revenge took root and sprouted madly in his heart, devouring the last bit of his sanity. Lu Xian, due to his outstanding performance in compiling the history of the previous dynasty, was promoted exceptionally. In just 1 year, he rose from compiler at the Hanlin Academy to lecturer in waiting, becoming a close minister to the emperor. The vice minister of personnel was celebrating his birthday and specially sent an invitation, asking Lu Xian to attend the banquet. I also attended in my capacity as the wife of a Hanlin scholar. At the banquet, I met many noble ladies I used to have to look up to. Now they all came forward on their own to befriend me, their words full of flattery. I handled it all with ease, but my heart remained calm as still water. I had long seen through this hypocritical courtesy. The best part is the female lead state of handling everything with ease, her heart as calm as still water. Having experienced betrayal and scheming, she has long seen through these cold human relationships. This contrast of outwardly cooperating, while inwardly unmoved, is really both badass and heartbreaking. Halfway through the banquet, I excused myself to change clothes and came to the back garden for some air. Unexpectedly, at a corridor by an artificial rock formation, someone blocked my path. It was Gu Cheng'an. He had somehow found a way to sneak in as well. He looked even more haggard than the last time I saw him, but he wore a brand new brocade robe, seemingly trying to maintain his last shred of dignity. He changed from his previous madness, putting on that familiar look of deep affection and regret on his face. "Yue Zhao," he stepped forward, trying to grab my hand. I took a step back, avoiding his touch, my eyes cold. "Yue Zhao, I know I was wrong. I really know I was wrong." He lowered his posture, his tone full of pleading. "It was all that bitch Lu Ruyan who bewitched me. I've already driven her away. Come back. Let's be like before. Okay, the Gui family can't do without you, and neither can I." Watching his clumsy performance, I only felt it was utterly ridiculous and disgusting. "Does Master Gu have a poor memory?" I sneered coldly, reminding him. "We've long been divorced. I am now Madame Lu. Please show some respect." Seeing that the soft approach wasn't working, Gu Cheng'an's expression immediately darkened, revealing a threatening face. "Shen Yu Zhao, don't be so shameless when I'm giving you face." He lowered his voice and said viciously, "Don't forget, many of your business dealings can't stand the light of day. Without the protection of the authorities, they can't grow at all. If you don't obediently come back, I'll expose all your dirty secrets and leave you with nothing." As soon as he finished speaking, a cold voice rang out from behind him. "Oh, I'd like to hear how you plan to leave this official's wife with nothing." Lu Xian had walked over at some point. He was still wearing his official robes, standing behind Gu Cheng'an, with a posture like a pine tree, his bearing extraordinary. Gu Cheng'an whipped his head around, and seeing Lu Xian with his full aura on display, he was so frightened that he instinctively took a step back, his face instantly turning deathly pale. "Lord Lu." Lu Xian ignored him and walked straight to my side, naturally wrapping his arm around my waist and drawing me into his embrace. Only then did he glance indifferently at Gu Cheng'an, his eyes full of contempt. "Gu Cheng'an, you can't even protect your own family business. A waste who made his fortune off a woman, then what qualifications do you have to spout such nonsense here? Or are you saying that by harassing the family of a court official, you've made up your mind to spend the rest of your life in prison?" Each of his words was like a heavy hammer, pounding hard on Gu Cheng'an's heart. Just at that moment, the host, the vice minister of personnel, along with several guests, happened to pass by while chatting and laughing, and witnessed this scene. Seeing the wife of the esteemed Hanlin academician being pestered by a down-and-out merchant, they all cast contemptuous and disdainful looks at Gu Cheng'an. "Isn't that the wastrel from the Giyu family? How did he get in here? What a toad lusting after swan meat. Then he should take a look at what he has become now. SK. What an embarrassment." Those mocking voices pierced Gu Cheng'an like countless needles, leaving him utterly humiliated. Burning with shame and anger, his face turned the color of pig liver, and ultimately, under everyone's pointing and gossiping, he fled the banquet in panic. Leaning against Lu Xian's warm embrace, I watched his pathetic retreating figure, feeling thoroughly satisfied. Gu Cheng'an, this is just the interest. After being publicly humiliated, Gu Cheng'an completely lost his mind. He took out all the money he had earned from smuggling and used it to weave what he thought was a flawless net, a net sufficient to destroy Lu Xian completely, leaving him beyond redemption. He found a right censor-in-chief named Yang Xian, who disagreed with Lu Xian politically at court and constantly opposed the reformist faction. The two hit it off immediately, colluding in their villainy. Gu Cheng'an was responsible for providing evidence, while Yang Xian was responsible for launching the attack at court. He spent a fortune imitating Lu Xian's handwriting and forged several secret correspondences between Lu Xian and a general at the border. The content of the letters was that Lu Xian leaked to the other party the court's latest confidential information about grain and supply deployments, and agreed to jointly rise up in rebellion once the deed was done. He also created a fake ledger showing a huge sum of dirty money that, through several of my commercial firms, after multiple transfers, ultimately flowed into that border general's account. He even bribed several young clerks in my commercial firms to have them give false testimony. He believed all of this was flawless and interlocking, enough to nail down Lu Xian's heinous crimes of corruption, perversion of law, colluding with the enemy, and betraying the country. Hiding in a dark corner, he imagined the scene of Lu Xian being escorted to the execution ground, while I knelt before him groveling and let out a triumphant laugh. He didn't know that all his movements were under surveillance by my intelligence network. His flawless plan that he was so proud of, in my view, was full of holes and utterly laughable. The border general he contacted was someone I had planted in the military 3 years ago, utterly loyal to me. The entire process of right censor-in-chief Yang Xian accepting his bribes, including the time, place, and amount, was all documented by my people with evidence and witnesses. Those few young clerks he bribed took his money and immediately sold him out. I played along with his scheme. I deliberately had my intelligence network release some fake vulnerabilities, making him think his plan was progressing exceptionally smoothly, making him even more convinced that victory was in his grasp. I even cooperated with him, making that so-called dirty money flow more realistically on the books. When Lu Xishan learned of my plan, he showed no sign of panic. He still attended court and left on time every day, compiled historical records at the Hanlin Academy, and chatted and laughed with his colleagues, as if completely unaware of the approaching storm. In secret, however, based on the intelligence I provided, he joined forces with 2nd Grand Secretary Lin and several core officials from the purist faction, making thorough preparations. Everything was ready, only waiting for the right moment. We had laid out an inescapable net, just waiting for that foolish prey Gu Cheng'an to personally present this deadly gift to the court himself. Winter Solstice Day, Grand Court Assembly. Civil and military officials gathered in the Hall of Supreme Harmony, the atmosphere solemn and dignified. Halfway through the proceedings, Right Censor-in-Chief Yang Xian suddenly stepped forward, holding his ivory tablet, and knelt on the ground. "Your Majesty, this subject has a memorial to present." His voice was resonant, carrying a tone of grief and indignation, instantly drawing everyone's attention. This subject impeaches the newly appointed Grand Secretary Lu Xian for corruption and perversion of the law, colluding with external enemies, and plotting rebellion. As soon as these words were spoken, the entire court erupted in uproar. Lu Xian is the new noble most valued by the current emperor, a rising star of the Qinglu faction with boundless prospects. How could he be connected to treason? Yang Xian carefully presented the evidence. He had prepared Zandou's forged letters and account books. The emperor's expression instantly turned gloomy. He sent people to circulate the evidence among several key cabinet ministers. Gu Cheng'an, as the witness, was summoned to the Great Hall. He wore plain clothes, his face bearing an expression of grief and indignation, kneeling in the hall. He bitterly accused Lu Xian of how he abused his authority, accepting massive bribes through my trading company, and colluding with border generals to sell out national interests. His testimony perfectly aligned with Yang Xian's impeachment, and that evidence. For a moment, all fingers pointed at Lu Xian, who stood at the front of the officials, silent and speechless. Gu Cheng'an looked at Lu Xian's unable to defend himself appearance, and smiled smugly. his eyes full of vengeful satisfaction. He seemed to already see Lu Xian being dragged out of the great hall and beheaded for public display. The atmosphere in the entire court became extremely tense. At this moment, Lu Xian, who had been silent all along, finally spoke. He didn't defend himself, but simply turned calmly toward Gu Cheng'an and asked, "Gu Cheng'an, do you know what crime it is to falsely accuse a second-rank official of the court?" His voice wasn't loud yet. It was like a thunderclap exploding beside Gu Cheng'an's ears. Gu Cheng'an's heart skipped a beat, and an ominous premonition surged up in his mind. Immediately after, Lu Xian took out a memorial from his sleeve and presented it with both hands. "Your Majesty, I also have a memorial here to impeach the commoner Gu Cheng'an for colluding with water bandits, smuggling private salt, embezzling state tax revenue, and crimes of the most heinous nature." The memorial recorded in detail every single transaction Gu Cheng'an had made from the beginning of his smuggling until now. Time, location, goods, contacts, all crystal clear. The evidence was 100 times more substantial than Yang Xian's fabricated proof. Immediately following, a scene that made both Gu Cheng'an and Yang Xian's souls fly away in terror appeared. That accomplice general whom they thought was far away at the border actually appeared in the great hall wearing armor. "This general pays respects to your Majesty. This general wishes to accuse Jing'an and Right Censor-in-Chief Yang Xian of attempting to bribe this general, forge evidence, and frame Grand Secretary Lu of the Cabinet." The general presented all the original letters from people sent by Gu Cheng'an to contact him, as well as the official position credentials that Yang Xian had promised him. Both witness and physical evidence were present. And this still wasn't over. The Minister of Revenue immediately stepped forward next. "Your Majesty, regarding the illicit funds mentioned by Censor Yang, I can testify. Those were not illicit funds, but charitable donations from Madame Luan N. Shen to our dynasty, intended for disaster relief in the Northwest, totaling 500,000 taels of silver. All fund transfers have complete records on file with the Ministry of Revenue." Finally, an old household servant from Yang Xian's residence was brought before the hall. He testified on the spot that he personally witnessed Gu Cheng'an visiting Yang Xian late at night, on multiple occasions, delivering several heavy chests filled with gold and silver. The evidence was conclusive. Ironclad proof. The plot twist came so fast that everyone was caught off guard. Gu Cheng'an and Yang Xian transformed from plaintiffs to defendants in an instant. False accusation of court officials, bribery and corruption, smuggling and illegal trade, intent to commit treason. Multiple crimes punished together. The smugness and satisfaction on Gu Cheng'an's face shattered inch by inch, leaving only endless fear and despair. He collapsed on the spot, his face ashen as death, muttering to himself, "Impossible. This is impossible." The emperor flew into a rage and immediately ordered Yang Xian and Gu Cheng'an thrown into the imperial prison, stripped of all official positions and honors, awaiting judgment. An earth-shattering court confrontation came to a close in a way no one had anticipated. The case of Gu Cheng'an and Yang Xian implicated many, and a large number of officials in the court who were Yang Xian's accomplices fell from power one after another. Gu Cheng'an's crimes were irrefutable, and he was sentenced to exile 3,000 li away to a plague-ridden land, never to return to the capital. All his assets, including the Gu Manor, where he had lived for half his life, were confiscated by the state. The Gu family, a clan that had once risen to prominence by relying on my Shen family's wealth, completely fell from grace in the capital and vanished into thin air. Meanwhile, Lu Xian, through his composure, strategic wisdom, and decisive methods displayed in this case, won the emperor's favor. The emperor believed he not only had talent, but also possessed the political acumen to stabilize the nation, and relied on him increasingly. In the following years, with my business intelligence and financial support, Lu Xian repeatedly achieved remarkable feats in the political arena. He reformed the bureaucracy, cracked down on corruption, implemented new policies, and reduced taxes. His official position rose all the way from Grand Secretary of the Cabinet to Minister of the 6 Ministries, and finally entered the cabinet, becoming the youngest Grand Secretary in the history of the Great Zhou dynasty. His power dominated the court. As the Grand Secretary's wife, my Shen Trading Company also became an imperial merchant, with business spanning the realm, and wealth rivaling nations. We moved into the Grand Secretary's manor bestowed by the Emperor. Coincidentally, this manor was right next to the Gu manor. Back when Gu Cheng'an was escorted into exile, he happened to pass by here. I stood by the window on the second floor, coldly watching him in shackles, walking step by step toward the fate he deserved. Time flows on, things change and people differ. On a clear afternoon, I stood by that window again, watching the bustling traffic outside, a scene of prosperity. A pair of warm arms wrapped around me from behind. Lucian gently rested his chin in the crook of my shoulder, his voice carrying a satisfied smile. Yue Zhao, without you, there would be no Lucian of today. I turned around, reaching up to caress his handsome face, my fingertips tracing the fine lines at the corners of his eyes that had appeared from his toil over state affairs. I smiled and said, "We are husband and wife, naturally one entity." He held my hand, bringing it to his lips for a gentle kiss. The deep affection in his eyes enough to drown a person. We lived the kind of life that in others' eyes was like that of an immortal couple, and those who had once tried to harm us had long since turned to dust in history, forgotten by the world. Time flew by, and another 5 years passed. Once a riot broke out in the capital prison, and Lucian personally went to inspect it. Worried, I accompanied him as well. After inspecting the ordinary cells, the jailer led us toward the deepest area where serious criminals were held. It was dark and damp there, the air filled with a rotten, moldy smell. In a cell in the furthest corner, I saw a figure curled up in a pile of straw. That person was disheveled and filthy, barely clothed, like a walking corpse. The jailer pointed at him and curled his lip in disdain. "Lord Chief Minister, madam, this is a madman. He went insane after returning from exile 10 years ago. All day long he just mutters a woman's name, giving people a headache." My heart inexplicably stirred. I lifted my skirt and slowly walked toward that cell. By the light of the jailer's lantern, I finally saw that face clearly. It was a face completely destroyed by time and suffering, covered with wrinkles and filth, no longer resembling its former appearance. But in those murky eyes, I still recognized the remaining outline. It was Gu Cheng'an. He seemed to sense someone's presence and looked up in confusion. When his gaze fell upon me, it was first empty and confused. Then suddenly, in those lifeless eyes, a terrifying light burst forth. Like a dying person seeing a lifeline, he suddenly scrambled up from the ground, lunged at the cell door, and desperately gripped the cold iron bars. "Yue Zhao, it is you. It is Yue Zhao." He was so excited, he became incoherent, his voice hoarse beyond recognition. "I knew you would come save me. Quick, get me out. I know I was wrong. I really know I was wrong." I looked at him calmly, as if looking at a stranger who had nothing to do with me. "What were you wrong about?" I spoke lightly, my tone flat and distant. He answered urgently, afraid of missing this only chance. "My mistake was being seduced by that bitch Lu Ruyan. My mistake was being possessed and divorcing you. My mistake was letting go of you. This treasure trove. Yue Zhao, give me one more chance. I'll treat you well. We'll rebuild the Guyu family together." Hearing his words, I laughed. I laughed so hard I was doubled over, tears almost coming out. "Gu Cheng'an, even now, you still think your only mistake was letting go of my money." I put away my smile, my eyes instantly becoming incredibly cold, like two of the sharpest knives, stabbing straight into his heart. I told him word by word how he had once enjoyed the wealth I brought him with such peace of mind, yet how he looked down on my merchant family background. I told him how he had once suppressed Lu Xian, who was 100 times more talented than him, out of ridiculous jealousy. I told him how he had once taken my sincere heart and devotion for granted, trampling on them at will. Your biggest mistake is the selfishness, greed, and stupidity deep in your bones that you're unaware of. My voice was soft, yet every word pierced his heart. You thought you had calculated everything, but you didn't know you were the most ridiculous pawn. Your today is what you chose for yourself, step by step, with your own hands. Having said that, I no longer looked at his face that was completely twisted from despair and breakdown, turned around, and left without hesitation. Behind me came his desperate howls and cries like a wild beast, which were eventually swallowed up at the end of the dark corridor. I held Lu Xian's hand and walked out of that oppressive prison. Outside, the sunlight was just right. The dark oppression inside the prison made Gu Cheng'an's wailing particularly piercing, He remained stubbornly unrepentant to the very end. Behind the female lead lay darkness, wailing, and an unworthy past, while ahead lay warm sunlight, her lover's hand, and a brand new life. The moment the female lead walked out of the prison holding Lucian's hand, it wasn't wild joy after revenge, but rather a calm and relieved sense of settling dust. All that betrayed sincerity and calculated time completely turned the page in that instant of leaving the darkness and embracing the sunlight. After returning from the prison, the name Gu Chang'an never appeared in my mind again. In my life, there was only Lucian's gentle companionship day after day, the cheerful laughter of our children, and good news from Shen's trading company, arriving from all over the country. I used my wealth to assist Lucian in building water conservancy projects, establishing girls' schools, and providing disaster relief. We were no longer living just for ourselves. We began to make whatever changes we could for this era, for the people of the realm. Lucian became what the common people called a wise minister, who carried on the past and opened the future. And I was the woman behind him, whom no one dared to look down upon or gossip about. Later, I vaguely heard people mention Liu Ruyan's fate. After that wealthy merchant got tired of her, she was discarded like a piece of trash. Later, she drifted from one man to another, until finally, old and faded, riddled with disease. She ended up on the streets, and froze to death in a dilapidated temple on a cold winter night. When I heard this news, I was reading a newly arrived storybook, and my heart didn't stir in the slightest. The endings of these people no longer mattered to me. Another winter day arrived. Outside, heavy snow was falling in flurries, draping the entire capital in a layer of silver. Lucian and I were playing chess indoors where it was warm as spring. On the small red clay brazier, a pot of clear wine was being warmed. He held the black pieces. I held the white. As one game ended, he grasped my hand that was about to place a piece and asked softly, "What are you thinking about? You seem distracted." I looked out the window at the vast white snow, everything silent and still. My thoughts drifted back many years ago, to another snowy day like this, when Gu Chang'an was locked in iron chains, passing by the gate of the chief minister's residence. I slowly withdrew my gaze and shook my head at him. Then, with a smile, I gently placed the white piece in my hand on the tengen position of the board. The game was decided, just like my life. Nothing. I looked at him, my eyes filled with tenderness and contentment that couldn't be dissolved. I just feel that this winter's snow scenery is truly beautiful. Outside the window, myriad lights from countless homes. A scene of peace and tranquility. Inside the room, a warm brazier and heated wine, my beloved companion by my side. My life has finally reached its most peaceful and most perfect ending. One's perspective determines the outcome. A long-term vision triumphs over calculating every second. Gu Chang'an was obsessed with immediate financial calculations and ultimately suffered the consequences of his short-sightedness and greed, whereas Shen Yuzhao was able to focus on the long term, supporting Lucian and strategizing for their business, ultimately becoming the winner. This teaches us, temporary gains and losses don't matter. What truly determines the outcome is one's perspective and vision, not being concerned with small immediate gains. Knowing how to lie low and strategize, and setting one's sights on longer-term growth and value. Only then can one walk more steadily and go further.